Hi, everybody. Welcome to the ELT Time Plus, the second episode of Series 4. You can see I'm with John Cruft, our friend of Macmillan Education. How are you, John? You all right?
Excellent, Dale. Great to be back. Good to see
Yeah,
you. And hi to all the teachers there. Thanks for joining.
yeah. Thank you very much for participating today. It's great, always great to chat to you. And yeah, you're missed, so it's nice to have you back. What have you
Likewise.
been up to then? Just give us a brief update. So we had you back. I guess it was probably a year ago, wasn't it, when we talked in the ELT time about becoming a teacher trainer, wasn't it? We were sort of moving from teacher to teacher trainer. Today we're going to be talking about something different, but just let us know what you've been up to for the last year.
Cool. Last year. Yeah, fantastic. Right. I'm back in Vietnam. It's a place where I first started my teaching back in 2004, many, many years ago. So it's great to be back. And yeah, I'm working as the sort of training manager for a government school project at the moment where we send teachers out to schools. We work with about
Right.
80 schools, 200 teachers. So I'm in charge of inducting all of those teachers and keeping their professional development going throughout the
Okay.
year. So it's wonderful to be back and having a group of teachers for the whole year that you can sort of
Right.
move with them. It's lovely actually.
Yeah. Get to see some progress, right?
Hopefully, yes.
Cool. And is that where is that in Hanoi, in Ho Chi Minh City, or is it across the whole country?
Hanoi, yeah, across the
Right.
city of Hanoi, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And I know in your bio it's like 180 teachers, 10 senior teachers. That's quite a number. So how do you manage all that?
Well, I don't have to actually so much. The senior teachers are the real workhorses. They're doing a great job, and they each have around sort of 20 teachers each. So actually, I work closely with them, sort of training the regional head teachers or senior teachers, who then sort of
Okay.
cascade down. So yeah, just sort of helping little creative, little professional development, little projects that we can integrate
Fantastic.
throughout the year. Um, so we've got a bit of a chant thing going on at the moment, where sort of a chant competition where teachers sort of submit little chants that go with kind of a vocab or a grammar lesson or something like
Oh,
that.
cool.
And yeah, and then doing some for secondary, some little sort of video tutorials. So just trying out some new things. So it's really
Nice
nice.
one. That
Yeah,
sounds great. Yeah.
yeah.
And then, okay, cool. All right. Well, we'll get cracking with today's topic, which is when I met you a few weeks ago to discuss what we could actually talk about. You actually came up with this about marginal gains. Now, some of you might know John is a huge cyclist. He's cycled in I don't know how many continents in all these amazing places. And this idea of marginal gains. Well, you can explain, John. It comes from cycling, right?
Yeah, so actually it's so lovely when you can sort of bring across your passion into your work as well. And so actually marginal gains was coined by a guy called Sir Dave Brailsford, who was the head of British cycling at the time, many, many years ago. And his dream was always to win the Tour de France, which is the big cycling event. And he ended up doing it. He started from, scratch. And what they did is just looked at every different aspect of from the bicycle, from the rider, from the diet, from the clothing that they wear, from their routines, and just tweaked and changed little things, little 1% things across the board in all areas, which then add up to, a very, large impact.
Right.
And since then, businesses, for example, organizations are starting to use the same kind of philosophy, changing little things inside the business, and all those things add up, to large impact. And it's the same with teaching, isn't it? Our teaching, if we look at different aspects of our teaching and tweak little things here and there, we can, add, and make a sort of a large impact.
Yeah, I really like that idea. When I was again researching this and I did a bit of research with Dave Brailsford, um, there was a mention of like even down to like washing your hands properly. So if you take care and wash your hands properly, you're less likely to get sick. and therefore your performance is either going to be the same or even better because you're healthier, right? So even little things like that. So should we try and translate that then into English language teaching, and see if there's if we can have some crossover? Um, so I can I start by just giving you an example of what I might consider a marginal gain is, and it's from an experience that I had. Maybe you can then tell me if it is, and then reflect on that, and then give me some more ideas. Yeah, does that sound good?
Go for it.
Okay. So when I was in my early teaching career, I worked at a school in Bangkok, a boys' school, um, and I was I've always loved teaching, of course, since my first class. I really enjoyed it, and I thought I was a good teacher, and I think I was a good teacher. I really cared about my learners and all this kind of stuff. But the way that I was taught to plan lessons was to write the lesson aims, um, obviously as the guide to what you're going to do. And I used to write like it might be like to teach the present perfect for experience, right? This is an example, and that would be my
Mm.
aim. And then my lesson would be related to that aim, and I'd have activities and warmers and all this kind of stuff. And then I was observed, and the person who observed me, um, her name was Tracy, really really cool boss, and she took me in for the feedback session and said, "Why don't you try writing your aims from the point of view of your learners?" So it was a very small nuanced change. So she just took me through it, and she said, "So for this lesson, you might have written um, at the end of the lesson, the students will have practiced using the present perfect for experience." And
Yeah,
did it, and so and from that, it was like it was a real game changer for me. A very small change, but it made a huge difference because everything was related to the outcomes of the what the students were doing then, and not what I did, because I achieved my aims obviously by teaching the present perfect, but
yeah,
I didn't have any clue what the students were actually doing because it wasn't in my aims. Does that make sense?
definitely. I mean, that's a little tweak, isn't it? It's a little tweak, a little 1% tweak. Absolutely. And I was smiling because this is something that we've been working on as well. And we've been sort of working with teachers to try and do that, make the outcomes, for example, the aims more kind of student focused, but have it in a way that it kind of matches like the final productive task. That's the measure. So for example, by the end of the lesson, students will be able to talk to a partner about past experiences using the present perfect, for example. And then the final task, the final productive or freer practice, was a task where they had to work with a partner and share experience. So that's a good question to ask them in the feedback is like, do your outcomes and that final freer practice, do they match?
Do they marry together? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, and that kind of realization was is a little tweak, isn't it? And everything that goes toward before that is kind of building, 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 building towards that. And another example there, Dale, is that if you ask your teachers why they are doing every activity as well, and get them to think about that why as they go through the lesson, I think that's a really good marginal gain, a little tweak to get them thinking about the lesson as a whole, building, building, building towards something. Like the reason they are doing the activities really helps them kind of focus on what activities they choose and why they're doing it.
Yeah, the why, the start with why, the Simon Sinek, isn't it? I think
Mm,
is the book. I've got that on one of my on my shelf here somewhere.
yeah.
Start with why. That's a really really great question to ask yourself in reflection.
Isn't it? Again, so just to add there,
No,
these teachers I'm working with only have 35 minutes for their class, and they have to get through a whole present, practice, production cycle in that time.
that's
So you
tough.
can
Yeah,
imagine it's a real kind of bun fight to get there. So if you're asking yourself why all the way through, anything that doesn't make sense to your question why is like kick it out.
yeah,
No, you don't need it if it's not leading towards that kind of final task, and leave yourself
yeah.
more time.
And I guess you can really I don't want to use the idiom, but you can really select, like you just said, get rid of the stuff that you don't need. It really, really makes your lesson more coherent and less flabby, if you like, if that's the
Yeah,
right word. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
So
But
we have challenges in Asia. I'm sure you're aware of this from observing teachers. One of them is, large classes. Often when we ask for feedback, teachers will tell us that large classes are a challenge for
mhm.
us. Mixed ability classes, or let's call it more diverse levels of students in the class. Um, how could we implement, say, a marginal gains approach to these challenges? Is there any ideas that you've got for that?
Yeah, from the classes, I've been lucky enough to observe a lot of classes over the last month. That's part of the kind of the first cycle of formal observations. And yeah, these are quite low level, sort of large class sizes. And sort of the common thing is that how do you shift from that kind of teacher student dynamic and just let go a little bit and just integrate a little bit more student to student in interaction in the class. Sometimes with large classes and classroom management, we're a bit scared to let go, aren't we, and lose control. But so yeah, just sort of thinking about raising that percentage of student to student in interaction time. And that could be anything from, as they arrive on the board, a few questions. They work with their partner to review the questions which relate to the last class, for example. Little pair shares. When you're doing the context of a lesson, you throw up a picture, put them in pairs, they pair share. Um, it could be little pair checks after checking homework or student book. Could be a little exit ticket, and little things throughout the lesson where you can just add a little bit more students to student without kind of losing control,
Right.
and out and without losing too much time. That is the payoff as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it does make, if you do implement this, I think it makes it a bit like if you're giving teacher feedback on, say, their observation, you might be like, oh, your classroom management is needs a bit of work. Have you tried this? And I think like when you think about that, it's such a big area, isn't it, to think about. And if you have got some constructive criticism that you might be feeling not great about, then it's very, you pick up a book and then have to sort of change your whole approach to teaching. It's very daunting, right? How can you do that? So I think implementing these small changes throughout a term can be a real game changer. It really shifts the way that you do things, and all of a sudden you get to the end of the term and you've made a great difference, right? And then you can maybe start on something else. So would you recommend, say, to have one focus for, say, like a term, and apply marginal gains to that one focus rather than trying to do it across a number of different issues?
Yeah. What I would say first is that, you know, sometimes there are big gaps and skills gaps, knowledge gaps with teachers, and you sometimes do have to address the bigger
Right.
things first, especially to the classroom management. If you haven't got your classroom management systems and behavior management systems set up, that you have to address that as a big unit. But after that, in terms of observations, and it'd be interesting to see what um, our friends in the chat box say, but and what they like to have as well. But I always go for like three, three little
Right.
things to work on. Once you've worked on those, come back, give you maybe, one more, two more, three more, drip feed as we go. But yeah, just not too much at one time. Sort of maximum of probably three
Right.
little tweaks at a time. Go away, try it out. Once you're happy with it, come back. Let's give you some more.
That's nice. So kind of like I'm thinking about in the past about my development plans that I had when I was teaching, and we had things called learning and development plans and job plans and these kind of things. It's kind of be good to maybe even write these down as well, yeah, and kind of like have a record of them and then reflect upon them as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and we've worked really hard at kind of at the lesson journey. So showing the students what they're going to be studying, like at the start of the class, and as you go through, you're kind of ticking off these things as you
Mm,
go through, right? And some teachers develop a little cheer. So after they do, one of the objectives from the lesson, they do a little cheer, like, "Did you do it? Yes, we did." And you're ticking, 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 building that sense of achievement. And then at the end of the class, okay, what did we do today? And again, that's a very little tweak, and that just needs one little slide at the start, and then that same slide you copy and paste at different points in your
Yeah.
lesson to transition, review what's been done, let's move on. And that's a very, very simple change, but it's really effective for showing that lesson journey, building that sense of achievement. And the teacher I saw today did it after feedback
Hey,
last time. She added it and she had a slide, and then she would just tick it off every time, and it was great to see. And yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, we used to back in the day, I don't know, I'm sure lots of teachers do now, but we had obviously whiteboards with the whiteboard markers, and we got to get in the lesson early beforehand and put down like bullet points of exactly what we were going to do in the classroom and then tick them off as we went along. But getting the class involved is really cool, and maybe even getting a kid to come up and do the ticking off. Can we tick it off? And then they tick it off.
yes,
And I think
yeah,
particularly
brilliant.
nowadays with like attention spans getting shorter and like, gamification and just being able, the idea of moving on after you've achieved something is it's very much out there, isn't it? So that'd be a really cool thing to do.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And just going back to what you said there about getting a student up, this teacher today, they always do, it's kind of like the local district education and training policy that you have to have the class rules and go through the class rules at the start of the class. So sit quietly, speak English, be nice, these kind of things. And this teacher actually brought a student up to be the teacher today, and then that student delivered the class rules, and the others sort of followed and did the actions for it. So you're handing over
Ah,
the power again, a little tweak, handing
yeah,
over the power at certain points of the lesson to the student who become the teacher is was very nice.
yeah, cool. Just as a side to that, just a little bit of a tangent, but we've been looking at a lot of creativity and stuff recently, and one of the creative tasks that we suggest for teachers is when they do have a new class. Normally, they do that thing like with the rules of the classroom, and they might get the kids to sign a contract, right? To show that they understand these rules. They have to be on time, they have to do their homework, all this kind of stuff. But
Doesn't work in government schools.
right. But it's funny, but the creative task at the start is to actually get students to tell you what they shouldn't do. So what it's like things like what will make the teacher angry, right? So they
Yeah,
come up with all these ideas
yeah,
about
yeah,
how they
yeah.
can make the teacher angry. It's really good fun. There's like,
Yeah.
don't just walk out of the classroom. Don't tell them you're going to the bathroom. Right on the desk, and then you just turn it
Yeah.
around. And these are your rules. So it's kind of they then see they have fun with it, but they also then see the reasons as to why.
I like that. And then the teacher can refer back to that throughout the class. And
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't have to be 100% serious, right? What makes
yeah,
teacher angry, and you can say, you're making teacher angry.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that could be cool, couldn't it? And yeah. Yeah, what else for I'm thinking, yeah, one of the most difficult things for large class sizes is like equal opportunity.
right.
So part of the program, we get a lot of feedback from different stakeholders. So get feedback from the teaching assistants, the heads of department, the head teachers, the parents, the students. There's so much data coming back. And one of the biggest things from students and parents is like, I didn't have an opportunity to say anything in class. My teacher didn't ask me when I put my hand up. And so how do
Yeah,
you ensure as a teacher, if you've got, 30, 40 students, to make sure that you're being equal, with your nominating? That's a very sort of tricky one. And some teachers like use kind of wheels, like a wheel it's like an online wheel, and they put all the
yeah.
students' name on the wheel and spin the wheel.
We'll decide.
But
Yeah,
but then when you've got 40 students putting all their name in a wheel,
yeah.
it's like, it's like, yeah. Some use little lollipop sticks. They write
Right.
the student's name on lollipop sticks, and when they ask a question, they pick a lollipop stick at random. Yeah, read out the student's name and then put it back into another pot. And then at least they know who's had a chance and who hasn't. And as you go through the lesson, you choose different students. And it doesn't matter if you don't get through everyone in one lesson, right? Next lesson, you can, start where you left off and make sure
Yeah.
those who didn't have an opportunity last lesson will have an opportunity. It's tricky. It's tricky.
How
But
many students in the class then? The 40, are you saying?
And actually, at the moment, usually they split it in half. So usually it's around 24, 25, which is
Okay, that's
manageable. But
yeah,
a lot of teachers out there have way more, don't they? 40, 50. So that that,
yeah,
that
that's
is where the
right.
challenge comes in, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I
yeah, and I
think
guess
the first, sorry to interrupt.
no.
I think the first step there, though, the tweak there is just being aware of it. Just being aware
Mhm.
of equal opportunity is a good first step, and then from there, you can add a few sort of strategies.
Yeah, I with the lollipop sticks and the wheel decide that kind of thing. The only downside of that could be that particularly with wheel decide with this wheeldecide.com I think it is, but you can program it so that it removes the name. So, but the only problem with that is if you answer the first question, you know you're not going to get picked on for
Ah,
the rest of. So the
yeah,
lollipop stick's quite nice if you just put the lollipop sticks back
yeah,
in,
yeah,
but you can have a little look yourself, so you
yeah,
know if you know whoever
oh,
one of your students is playing up and they've already answered a question,
yeah, yeah.
you can pull their name out again and go, so it
And
brings them back
uh,
in.
another way is that you would nominate one student to answer a question, and then that student
Ah,
would
yes,
then nominate another student, for
yeah,
example, and then so you push the nomination back on the students,
yeah, good fun.
and then they can't complain because it's their responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a thought about I was thinking about when I was doing my teaching qualifications, my further teaching qualifications, and one of the things that I focused on was giving instructions. And this
Yep.
is always an area when I've observed teachers that it's not
Mm.
that it's they're not that effective with giving instructions, often having to repair instructions. So if you have to give the instructions twice, you've already failed in your instructions, right? So I did a whole kind of like project on building my skills at giving instructions. And one of the tweaks that I had was one was to give multiple inputs. So normally we would give verbal instructions, right? So providing verbal, but then also just very simply providing written instructions. And when you provide written instructions, you have to be very clear with your language. So that makes your verbal instructions very clear as well. Because often you can waffle, right, when you're giving instructions. But if you've already written those instructions down and they're on the board, then you have to become very, very clear with your instructions. And sorry, just one little tip
Go
with
on.
giving instructions or with talking to students in a class is if you're asking for if you're concept checking or instruction checking the instructions. Um, so to open your books to page 24, what page are you going to turn to? And then you ask somebody, right? And you can't hear them. The natural thing is to move closer to that person, right? So the teacher will walk towards the person and go, say it again. And then so they don't have to do anything. They don't have to change the volume of their voice or make themselves heard. If you move backwards, then they have to project their voice. And it takes some practice, but it's really, really worth it, particularly in a big classroom. So that's just another little tweak, another little marginal gain that becomes very effective.
I saw William posted their instructions. And
Yeah.
absolutely, this is probably the number one thing that new
All right.
new
Well,
teachers new teachers not get wrong, but they struggle with is just over talking your instructions, speaking too much, using quite complex words and structures, and just losing the students, right? So like
yeah.
like you said, just very clear, bite-sized instructions. Check those instructions, model those instructions if you have a teaching assistant or a strong student. um, the teacher today actually they were filling out a timetable for times, Monday to Friday of lesson subjects in their school. So she actually put the timetable up and sort of demonstrated what they had to do, with the page from the book, on the screen. And it was just so easy to understand the way that she did it, basically. And so just sort of find that way, that's sort of easy for the students, isn't it,
Yeah. I
to
had
pick
that
up?
written actually, modeling actually on my list of things to discuss. Um, all right, we're coming towards the end now. You're dealing a lot with professional development. What are some small tweaks that we could give to teachers to help them with professional development. I know obviously getting your teaching practice right it's all professional development, but what about maybe about reflection or reading or learning something outside of what they're doing? Are there any tweaks that you could help teachers to give them, because it's all time, isn't it?
Yeah, one that we've been doing with the senior teachers here to make them more aware, for example, of what we're talking about today, these one percenters. It's a really nice task. Is oh, in the past we've recorded lots of demo videos of teachers teaching in classes, and there are loads. There are loads online that you can watch, and it's actually to watch a demo class and then try and write down 10 little one percenters that you would do differently with that class, for
Ah,
example. And
yeah,
it's a really nice activity. And so if there's any teacher managers out there or directors of studies who do professional development, it's a really nice task to do with your teachers. It could be a self-study task. You send them a demo video with some guiding questions, and they try and identify little 1%, maybe 10 1% tweaks for the lesson. But give them some parameters, in terms of instructions, setting up
yeah,
activity, task management, et cetera, et cetera. Is a good one. Um, but I think yeah, and I think the other thing, Dell, is just not to don't overload your PD. Keep it simple. And what we're trying to do at the moment is each month is, well, actually, at the moment, each week have a focus for the week. So this week is student to student interaction week. So we'll do a little bit of PD around student to student interaction in your classes, and your reading around PD will be on that topic. And then next week we're going to do instructions, and everyone is going to focus on instructions. Here's a bit of PD. Here's a bit of reading. So every week you have that kind of focus. Otherwise, you get a bit lost sometimes, don't you, with
yeah.
all everything that's out there. And that's a good way to focus and yeah, and have like a structured approach to your PD.
Yeah, yeah, definitely having some structure is useful. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I subscribe to the Modern English Teacher, and that is all themed now. It's all like this month is classroom management. This month is so even that PD and that is all focused. And otherwise, yeah, you can just go everywhere, can't you? You can confuse yourself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And a guy just posted there. He calls these tweets missed opportunities.
Yeah, cheers,
I
guy.
quite like that, and that's a nice way to frame it, isn't it? Observations. Do you think you might have missed an opportunity there? What opportunity do you think there might have been? And that's a nice
Yeah,
question to ask. I'll try that tomorrow with my feedback, guy. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, the student turned his desk over and hit another kid with a chair. Do you think you could have missed an opportunity? No, I'm just joking, guy. Sorry, no. But yeah, I mean, it is a nice way of definitely because and again, we're not you're going to miss so much in a lesson. It's a dynamic situation, right? It's not going to be no lesson is ever perfect, and there are loads of opportunities, I'm sure. And if another pair of eyes to actually point them out would be really useful. Peer observations, obviously, are very good, but they very rarely happen. I see in organizations that I've worked at. We've always had a system, but it's never really took off.
We have like a PD point system with about sort of 10 different categories, and peer observation is one of them. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful ones.
Right.
And but the key for a teacher manager is to identify the gaps, right? So, okay, this teacher's got a classroom management issue. And then the key is to find a teacher who's got very good classroom management.
Yeah,
That's
that's
where it's a little
yeah,
bit kind of tricky. And but then if you do that, make sure you build around lots of sort of self-reflection tasks as well, and evidence of learning from the lesson, like building a PD task around it as well to make sure that the teacher is getting the most out of it.
yeah. You don't want to pair a teacher up with somebody who's going to reinforce the habits that you don't want them to continue with, right? So yeah,
Well, there's that, and a lot of teachers game the system as well. They think just go and
yeah,
watch their mate teaching, and then
yeah,
go for a pint afterwards. But no, there needs to be proper evidence of learning from it, and then a reflection on their next class. How they've changed, for example, and
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, oh, it's 30 minutes already. That seemed about 5 minutes since we've
Oh,
started talking.
crikey!
Um, should we just ask if anybody's got any specific questions, and then and then we'll have to shoot off. So I'll have a look in the chat. But if anybody's got any questions, then we can potentially answer some of them.
There's some good ones. Yeah, we've got some talk about instructions, haven't we? And
Yeah,
some good tips here.
Will's been heavy in the chat. Me and Will used to play football together um, a long time ago.
How's Dale's football skills? Does he need to do any little tweaks, little 1% tweaks?
I
Do
could
you
have done
think,
with a
Will?
I could have done with a lot of yeah, a lot of maybe even more than 1% tweaks.
Yeah, yeah.
All
I
right. Well,
wonder, do you keep this chat? In Zoom, is it
yeah,
possible to
yeah,
keep that? I think there might have been some really good suggestions there. It'd be good
yeah.
to have a look at later.
It saves the chat is saved, yeah. So we can have a look. All right. Cool. All right.
Super.
Well, I'll just finish there then, John, and just say thank you so much for the chat. Like I said, it's always a good sign when it seems to last for 5 minutes,
I know.
and it's already half an hour. So thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Loved catching up with you. All the best for the rest of the term and everything, and observing all those, managing all those people. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Just to know that I don't have to manage anybody. I just have to be, there with the training, which is fantastic. It's a
Right,
perfect situation.
but managing the training for them to manage all the, you know what I mean. You get the point.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for having me, and yeah, brilliant to see you. And yeah, go well.
Yeah, get on your bike.
I will get on my bike. Yeah.
Cheers, mate.
All right.
Bye bye. See you.
See
Thanks,
ya.
everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.